The carriage had been padded so that a woman could be taken away without leaving bruises where anyone respectable might see them. Tabitha Ainsley understood that before she found the restraint.
The fixed panels along the inner walls were too thick for comfort, the leather inside the door had been reinforced, and beneath the seat lay a detachable wrist strap, repaired with crimson webbing.
3 black cross stitches crossed the repair in a neat row. Nothing in the Quenby Mews had ever looked more orderly. Nothing had ever frightened her more.
It was the afternoon of June 14th, 1818, and the carriage stood in shadow behind Quenby House with its lamps unlit, and no horses yet put to.
A narrow label tied beneath the driver's box named a private house beyond Highgate. Tabitha read it twice. Her pulse did not quicken until she heard Constance's voice beyond the stable partition.
"She'll be asleep before they bring her down," her cousin said. "Papa said the cordial would be enough." Tabitha moved behind a stack of folded carriage rugs and pressed one hand against her ribs.
An hour earlier, Constance had stood over her in the morning room with a small glass and the bright patience she used whenever cruelty needed to resemble concern. "Drink it," she had said.
"You look overset." Tabitha had taken one swallow. Beneath the sweetness came a bitter warmth and a scent she knew from years of nursing her mother. Laudanum.
She had measured it drop by drop through long nights, when pain had made sleep a mercy, and too much sleep a danger. Tabitha had set the glass down.
"I'm not thirsty." Constance had watched her too closely. "You're trembling. I'm angry. You see?"
"That is precisely what Papa means." Sir Bertram had entered then, composed and broad-shouldered, carrying the smooth authority of a magistrate who had spent years mistaking obedience for good sense.
He told Tabitha that her resistance proved she required rest. He told her Mary would remain in his household until Tabitha learned gratitude. He said nothing about a carriage. Mary had told her.
Her 17-year-old sister had slipped into Tabitha's chamber with a white face and both hands twisted in her skirt. "There's a closed carriage in the mews," she had whispered.
"Even said it leaves before dawn. Constance told him you're to be asleep before they carry you down. Mary had swallowed hard. Don't let them send you away." Tabitha had not promised safety.
She had promised only that she would look. Now, hidden behind the carriage rugs, she stared at the crimson repair. The loose end had begun to fray near the buckle.
She drew the small sewing scissors from her reticule and cut away the dangling strip. It came free with a soft snap of thread.
She folded it twice and placed it beside the cream paper packet of rosemary seeds that had belonged to her mother. The packet bore 2 faded lines in familiar handwriting.
"For remembrance, and for beginning again." Tabitha closed the reticule just as Sir Bertram entered the mews. "Rook's man will take the north road," he said.
"No stopping in town. And Mary?" Constance asked. "She will become more manageable without her sister's influence." Tabitha went still.
She had endured the household's careful corrections, Sir Bertram's lectures, and Constance's habit of calling every refusal agitation. She had endured them because Mary was younger, because both their parents were dead, and because an unmarried gentlewoman without a household of her own could be imprisoned by customs no door was required to display.
But she would not be carried out before dawn. She waited until their footsteps faded, then crossed the stable yard without running. Running would attract a groom. Running would make her look hunted.
She entered through the side passage, climbed the servant's stair, and reached Mary's room unseen. Mary rose from the window seat.
"You found it." "Yes. Then you have to go." "I do." Tabitha took both her sister's hands. "Listen carefully. If I am not back by tomorrow, write to Mrs. Belassus in Bloomsbury."
"She was Mamma's companion before either of us was born. Tell her what you heard."
Use the words private house beyond Highgate. Will she help? She will at least ask questions in places Uncle cannot silence. Mary's eyes filled.
"Where will you go?" "I don't know yet." The truth frightened them both. Tabitha kissed her forehead, left by the rear stair, and reached the street with only her reticule and a dark pelisse.
A hackney carriage carried her west through Mayfair, while afternoon traffic ground over the dry stones. She kept the curtain lifted just enough to watch for pursuit. No Quenby carriage followed.
At the Crown and Mitra Inn, she paid the driver with nearly all the coin she possessed, and entered through the public room.
A silver-haired woman with intelligent eyes looked once at Tabitha's face and guided her toward a private parlor without asking whether she had been expected. "You may sit here, miss,"
she said.
I'll bring tea. Plain tea, please. Of course. Tabitha stepped inside and discovered the room was occupied. A gentleman stood near the window with one gloved hand resting on the back of a chair.
He wore a dark traveling coat cut too well for a clerk and too plainly for a man eager to display wealth. Dust marked one boot.
Beyond the window, a groom was speaking to a wheelwright beside a disabled carriage whose rear axle had been braced with timber. The stranger glanced toward the innkeeper. Mrs.
Penrose, I thought this room was empty. It was, Mr. Kingscote. Your carriage will not be ready for another hour, and the other parlor has a broken latch. His gaze returned to Tabitha.
He did not stare at her creased pelisse, or the way she held the reticule against her ribs. Then the lady has the better claim. He moved toward the door. Wheels sounded outside.
A man shouted in the street. Tabitha could not identify the voice, but fear entered before reason could stop it. Wait. The stranger halted. Mrs. Penrose remained beside the open door.
Tabitha was grateful for that. I beg your pardon, she said. I have no right to involve you. That depends on what you mean to ask. His voice was low and controlled, not warm, not cold.
Attentive. Tabitha had spent 11 months softening truth until Sir Bertram could pretend not to hear it. She had no time left for softness.
My uncle intends to have me taken from London before dawn. He means to call it medical care. It is not. The stranger's expression sharpened.
What makes you certain? Tabitha opened her reticule and took out the crimson strip. 3 black cross stitches lay across her palm.
This came from a wrist restraint inside the carriage prepared for me. He did not touch it. Who arranged the carriage? Sir Bertram Quenby. Mr. Montague Rook may be involved.
I heard both names. Something changed behind the stranger's eyes at Rook's name, though his face remained still.
Where was the carriage meant to go? A private house beyond Highgate. And why have you come here? Because my sister remains under my uncle's roof.
If I disappear, she has no one who will contradict whatever he says about me. Mrs. Penrose quietly stepped into the corridor and drew the door nearly closed, leaving it unlatched.
The stranger waited. Tabitha felt the madness of what she was about to propose. Marriage placed a woman beneath a husband's authority.
Yet it also gave her a household, witnesses, and a name Sir Bertram could not simply erase before breakfast. She did not need romance. She needed a door he could not order opened.
She needed it before 6 in the morning. I need a husband by morning, she said. The stranger did not laugh. Do you? Yes. Any husband? No. She straightened.
On who will not mistake need for surrender. His gaze dropped once more to the crimson webbing.
Was the carriage meant to carry you, he asked, or restrain you? Both. Voices rose in the public room. One belonged to a Quenby footman.
Are looking for a lady who is unwell. Tabitha's fingers closed around the evidence. The stranger turned his head toward the corridor, then looked back at her.
My name is Everard Kingscote. The footman's voice came nearer. Sir Bertram requests that Miss Ainsley return home at once. Everard stepped between Tabitha and the door without touching either.
No one enters this room without Mrs. Penrose's permission. They won't, the innkeeper said. Everard faced Tabitha again. Dry humor briefly touched his mouth.
Marriage before breakfast is an ambitious beginning. She had no strength to answer. He saw that, and the humor vanished.
Then we must reach the ecclesiastical surrogate before he closes his office. The Quenby footman stopped outside the parlor door and tried the handle without knocking. It did not turn. Mrs.
Penrose had placed herself in the corridor with the authority of a woman who had spent years deciding which troubles crossed her threshold. Miss Ainsley is unwell, the man said. Sir Bertram requires her immediate return. Miss Ainsley has taken a private room, Mrs. Penrose replied. You may leave your message. You do not understand.
Sir Bertram is a magistrate. Everard did not raise his voice. He is not a warrant. The silence beyond the door lasted several seconds. Tabitha felt it press against her skin.
She knew the footman would be measuring whether the gentleman inside sounded important enough to disobey. Everard looked only at her. Did you leave Quenby House willingly? Yes. Did anyone bring?
You here by force? No. Do you wish to return? No. Each answer restored a small portion of the ground that fear had taken from beneath her. Everard nodded once.
Then we will proceed with facts before anyone else supplies them for you.
The footman knocked hard enough to rattle the panel.
Miss Ainsley, Sir Bertram says your agitation is worsening. Tabitha rose. Her knees held, though she had eaten little, and the bitter cordial still seemed to cling to the back of her tongue. Mrs.
Penrose opened the door only wide enough for Tabitha to be seen. The footman stood with another Quenby servant behind him. Both men wore expressions of rehearsed concern.
It is June 14th, 1818, Tabitha said. I left Quenby House shortly after 5 o'clock in a hired hackney carriage.
A closed dark blue carriage stood in the mews with fixed padded panels, thickened leather inside the door, and a detachable wrist restraint repaired with crimson webbing.
Its destination label named a private house beyond Highgate. I am 28 years old. I left willingly, and I will not return. The footman's face changed.
He had expected tears, perhaps confusion. Exactness left him with no easy performance.
Sir Bertram says you are not yourself. Then he may explain which fact I have stated incorrectly. The servant looked past her toward Everard.
And who are you, sir? A witness to her refusal. Everard stepped no closer, yet the footman retreated half a pace. You have delivered your message.
Leave the inn. Sir Bertram will not forget this. That makes 2 of us. Mrs. Penrose closed the door. Only after the servant's footsteps had faded did Tabitha sit again.
Everard drew the chair opposite hers closer to the table, but left enough distance that she did not feel surrounded. Now, he said, the cordial.
Begin before Constance handed it to you. Tabitha described the quarrel over Mary's future, Constance's concern, the glass, and the bitter warmth beneath the sweetness.
Everard asked how much she had swallowed. 1 mouthful. No more. Why do you believe it contained laudanum? Because I measured laudanum for my mother for years.
I know the odor and the aftertaste. Did you see Constance at it? No. Did you see where the glass came from? No. Then what do you know? That she pressed me to drink.
That the taste was consistent with laudanum. That she watched to see how much I swallowed. Everard's expression did not soften, but something in his attention sharpened. Good.
Now the carriage. She described the mews, the label, the fixed padding, the detachable restraint, and the conversation between Sir Bertram and Constance. He asked whether any groom could have heard.
Possibly, but I did not see one. Do not improve uncertainty. I am not. No.
You are not. It was the first praise he had given her, and because it was attached to precision rather than pleasing behavior, it steadied her. He asked what she knew of Montague Rook.
Only that Sir Bertram has attended meetings with him, and that Constance has spoken of his private house as if it were charitable. Have you met him? Twice.
He asked whether grief had made me nervous after my mother died. Everard's gaze became colder. And Mary? She heard the carriage would leave before dawn.
She knows Constance keeps a blue stoppered vial. Nothing more. Who else might help her? Mrs. Belassus in Bloomsbury.
She was my mother's companion, but I do not know whether a note would reach her before Sir Bertram acts. Everard absorbed that without promising what he could not yet deliver. Mrs.
Penrose returned with plain tea. She set the tray down, then saw the crimson strip still lying beside Tabitha's hand. The cups touched their saucers with a faint rattle.
Where did you find that? She asked. Tabitha covered it instinctively. Inside the carriage. May I look? Mrs. Penrose did not reach. Tabitha opened her hand. The widow bent closer.
Her face lost color when she saw the 3 black cross stitches. I know that repair. Everard rose. From where, Mrs.?
Penrose remained standing for a moment, as though sitting would make the memory too intimate. A private house outside Highgate.
After my husband died, his brother decided grief had made me incapable of managing what remained to me. I was taken there for rest. The word carried a bitterness deeper than the cordial.
Unrestraint tore near the buckle. They gave me crimson webbing and black thread and told me to mend it.
I used 3 cross stitches because I hoped the repair would hold only long enough for me to work it loose. Tabitha looked at the strip in her palm.
Can you swear this came from that house? No, Mrs. Penrose answered at once. I can swear the material and method are the same. I can swear such straps were used there.
I cannot swear this particular piece belonged to the one I touched. That is enough, Tabitha said. Enough to continue, Everard corrected. Not enough to accuse. Tabitha met his eyes.
The distinction was not a dismissal. It was protection against the kind of certainty Sir Bertram manufactured. Everard crossed to the bell-pull and instructed the inn servant to send at once for Mr.
Elias Latham in Bedford Row.
Tell him Everard Kingscote requires him, with license papers, a seal case, and a clerk prepared to reach the ecclesiastical surrogate before closing. The servant departed at a run.
Tabitha watched Everard. You speak as though solicitors come when you summon them. Good solicitors come when the matter is urgent. And is this urgent to you? A prepared carriage with
Restraints is urgent to anyone who does not wish to become complicit by delay. He sat again.
Marriage remains a separate question. You said we must reach the surrogate, so that the choice remains yours when morning comes. Mrs. Penrose poured tea and placed the plain cup before Tabitha.
No sugar. The consideration nearly undid her more than sympathy would have, mister.
Latham arrived before 7, carrying a leather case and the controlled alarm of a man accustomed to serious matters, but not unexpected brides.
He listened without interruption while Tabitha repeated the sequence. He verified her age, her residence at Quenby House, and Everard's residence at Wexborough House for more than 3 weeks.
The affidavits can be prepared, he said. The surrogate's office remains open, though not for long. A common license is possible if the clerk leaves immediately. Everard sent him.
Latham then placed clean folded paper on the table. Tabitha laid the crimson fragment inside herself. He folded it without touching the webbing, warmed sealing wax, and closed the packet.
Tabitha pressed a small mark into one side of the seal with the edge of her ringless finger. Mrs. Penrose marked another with her thimble.
Latham added his sign beneath theirs, then wrote the date, time, in, and names of those present across the outer fold. He locked the packet inside his case. Tabitha watched the key turn.
The fragment no longer existed only within her account. It had a place, a possessor, and witnesses. Everard took a fresh sheet. Separate apartments, he said as he wrote.
A connecting door secured from Miss Ainsley's side. No physical claim without her invitation. No medicine given without her knowledge.
No letter opened, withheld, or answered by another person. Tabitha interrupted. Mary's safety must be pursued whether or not I marry you. He wrote it.
I may refuse at the chapel. He wrote that too. No witness is to be paid for testimony. Latham glanced up. Everard's mouth almost curved.
You anticipate accusation efficiently. I have lived with people who do. He added the condition. When the terms were complete, Everard signed Everard Kingscote and passed the pen to Tabitha.
She signed beneath him. Mrs. Penrose witnessed the paper. Latham placed it in a separate compartment from the crimson fragment. Outside, the inn clock struck 8.
The license clerk had not yet returned. Everard poured himself tea that had gone cold. Marriage before breakfast remains ambitious. You may still refuse. So may you, Mrs.
Penrose looked toward Latham's locked case. Mr. Rook will know by morning that she escaped. Everard's eyes rested on Tabitha. Then he will also know she was heard, Mrs.
Penrose shook her head slowly. Men like Rook do not rely only on carriages. They prepare the family story first.
By the time the woman speaks, everyone has already been told what her words are supposed to mean. At 8:30 the following morning, Tabitha stood in the narrow vestry of St. Anselm's chapel while Reverend Folly studied her with the patience of a man who understood that haste did not excuse carelessness. Mrs.
Penrose had lent her a dove-gray gown that had belonged to a niece, and one of the inn maids had altered the waist before dawn. The sleeves were a little short.
The hem had been brushed, but could not be made new. Tabitha was grateful. She did not wish to look like a bride prepared for a dream.
She wished to look like a woman who understood the permanence of what she was about to do. Reverend Folly closed the vestry door, but left it unlatched. Mrs. Penrose waited on the other side.
Gentleman you intend to marry? Tabitha thought of Everard's questions, his refusal to touch the crimson strip, and the terms he had written before knowing whether she would reach the chapel.
I know what he has promised. That is not what I asked. The correction was not unkind. No, she said. I do not know him well. Then why proceed? Because the danger is immediate. Because he
believed enough of what I said to act, and because he wrote my right to refuse into the arrangement before I asked him to trust me. Reverend Folly folded his hands.
Marriage is not a temporary shelter. It cannot simply be set aside once the danger passes. I know. A husband will possess rights an acquaintance does not. I know that, too, has Mr.
Kingscote promised you money? No.
Has he threatened to withdraw aid from your sister if you refuse? No. He promised to pursue her safety whether I marry him or not. Has he made any physical
claim upon you? No. And if I tell you that you may leave through the side door without facing him or anyone else, what will you do? The chapel bell sounded the quarter hour.
Tabitha's heart answered with one hard beat. I will remain. Reverend Folly watched her for another moment, then nodded.
Then I am satisfied that you understand your choice. When Tabitha entered the chapel, pale morning light lay across the stone floor. Mrs. Penrose took her place near the front pew. Mr.
Latham stood beside the register table with the license in his hand and his leather case at his feet.
The crimson webbing remained sealed inside that case in a separate compartment from the written marriage terms. Tabitha knew exactly where it was. The knowledge steadied her.
Everard waited near the altar rail in a formal dark coat. He had removed the dust of travel without replacing it with display.
Nothing about his dress declared wealth, yet the cut of the cloth and the confidence with which Reverend Folly greeted him suggested a world larger than the inn parlor.
When he turned toward her, his expression revealed no impatience and no claim. "You came," he said.
"I said I would. People say many things before breakfast. So I have discovered." The faintest warmth touched his eyes. Mr. Latham placed the license on the table.
Reverend Folly examined the names and seals, then opened the marriage register. Mr. Kingscote. Everard took the pen. Tabitha watched him write his name in a firm, unhurried hand.
Everard Kingscote. Then beneath it he added 3 words, Duke of Wexborough. For one suspended moment the chapel contained no sound at all. Tabitha read the title again.
Her mind rejected it, then accepted it with a force that seemed to shift the stone beneath her feet. She looked at Mr. Latham. The solicitor lowered his eyes. Mrs. Penrose drew a slow breath.
Everard set down the pen and faced her fully. "You did not tell me," Tabitha said.
"No. Why? Because I needed your answer before my rank could influence it. Your rank influenced everything else. It allowed me to move quickly."
"It did not give me the right to purchase your consent." Anger rose beside astonishment. "You allowed me to believe you were merely a gentleman delayed by a broken carriage. I was a gentleman."
Delayed by a broken carriage. You are a duke. That is also true. Reverend Folly did not hurry her. Everard stepped away from the altar rail. "The side door remains open," he said.
If this changes your decision, go through it. Latham will still protect the evidence. I will still see that Mary is not abandoned.
Nothing promised last night depends upon your vows. The title had already altered the room. Tabitha could feel it in the solicitor's caution, in Reverend Folly's gravity, and in the silence Mrs.
Penrose maintained. Yet Everard stood aside from the altar as though the power belonged to her for this one decision. Before Tabitha could answer, the chapel doors opened sharply. Sir Bertram entered first, his face composed by effort. Constance followed in a blue morning gown. Montague Rook came behind them, broad, polished, and almost pleasant until his gaze found Everard.
Recognition struck him. "Your Grace." The title moved through the chapel like a bell note. Sir Bertram looked from Rook to Everard, and something in his authority faltered.
Constance's lips parted before she recovered. Everard's voice remained level. "You may state your business to Reverend Folly." Sir Bertram crossed the aisle carrying a folded document.
"This ceremony must not proceed. My niece is unwell. She fled my house in a state of agitation and attached herself to a stranger. She is of full age," Reverend Folly said.
"I have spoken with her privately." Sir Bertram placed the paper on the table. "Dr. Harwood has signed a preliminary certificate recommending private rest if her nervous agitation worsens. Mr.
Latham stepped closer. "Is that the original? An attested copy?" Sir Bertram said. "The original remains in Dr. Harwood's papers." Reverend Folly opened it.
Dated June 14th. Yes. Did Dr. Harwood examine Miss Ainsley before signing? Sir Bertram's jaw tightened.
Ree has attended the family. That was not my question. Rook intervened with a smoothness that made Tabitha distrust him more than anger would have. The certificate is precautionary.
Families must sometimes act before distress becomes dangerous. It recommends rest if agitation worsens, Reverend Folly said. It does not state that Miss Ainsley lacks understanding.
It does not record an examination. It does not grant authority to remove her. She stole from my carriage, Sir Bertram said.
"I cut a loose strip from a restraint prepared for my wrists," Tabitha replied. "If you call that theft, you must first explain the restraint." Constance moved toward her.
"Tabitha, you're frightened." Come home before this becomes worse. Worse for whom? You don't know what people will say. I know exactly what they will say.
You have been preparing them. Sir Bertram pointed toward Everard. She met this man last night. She cannot possibly comprehend the consequences. Reverend Folly folded the attested copy.
I asked Miss Ainsley about the permanence of marriage, her age, her residence, her sister, the rights she would surrender, and whether Mr. Kingscote had coerced or paid her. She answered clearly.
This document does not persuade me that she lacks capacity. She is dependent upon me, Sir Bertram said. I am 28, Tabitha answered. You control the roof over my head.
That is not the same as owning my judgment. You are not yourself. Then tell me which fact I have stated incorrectly. He did not answer. Sir Bertram reached toward her arm.
Everard stepped between them before contact was made. He did not touch Sir Bertram. He did not need to.
You will not lay a hand on her. She is my niece. She is not your prisoner. Rook's pleasant expression had vanished. He looked toward the sealed case near Latham's feet.
Your Grace, you do not understand what you have invited into your house. Everard did not look away from Sir Bertram.
I understand that a woman asked not to be removed against her will. Society will understand something else, Rook said. Society often does. Reverend Folly turned to Tabitha.
Miss Ainsley, the decision remains yours. She looked toward the side door. Morning light edged the frame. Freedom waited there in one form.
At the altar stood another kind, more dangerous because it required trust in a man whose power she had not understood until moments ago. She could leave. Everard had made that possible.
Then she thought of the padded carriage, Mary's frightened face, the sealed crimson strip, and the man who had asked what she knew, rather than what kind of woman she was.
Tabitha walked back to the altar rail. I choose to remain, Sir Bertram protested once, but Rook caught his sleeve and whispered something that silenced him. The vows were simple.
Tabitha spoke each word clearly. Everard did the same. When he placed the plain gold ring on her finger, he did not close his hand over hers. He waited. Tabitha turned her palm upward.
Only then did his fingers steady hers. They signed the register beneath his title. Mrs. Penrose and Mr. Latham signed as witnesses. Outside, carriage wheels and voices gathered near the steps.
News had traveled faster than dignity ever did. As Tabitha and Everard approached the doors, Constance moved ahead of them and addressed the callers waiting in the morning sun.
Her Grace has always suffered from episodes, she said. Rook stopped beside Sir Bertram and spoke quietly enough that only those nearest could hear. Marriage has changed the house around her.
It has not changed what society can be made to see. Everard looked at Tabitha, but he did not answer for her. Tabitha lifted her chin and stepped into the light.
The doors of Wexborough House opened before the ducal carriage had fully stopped, and Tabitha learned at once that great power rarely needed to hurry. Footmen descended the steps in silence. A gray-haired butler bowed first to Everard and then to her with identical precision. Your Grace! Your Grace! The title still felt borrowed when applied to her.
Only an hour earlier, Constance had used it before the chapel crowd, as though wrapping an insult in silk. Here the servants spoke it without curiosity, pity, or hesitation.
Everard stepped down, then waited beside the open carriage door. He did not offer his hand until Tabitha looked at it.
When she placed her fingers on his sleeve, he supported her without tightening his arm around hers. My mother is in the morning room, he said as they crossed the marble hall.
She learned of the marriage after breakfast. Was she pleased? My mother considers pleasure a conclusion best reached after examining the evidence. Tabitha glanced at him.
That sounds hereditary. His mouth moved at one corner. I had hoped marriage might improve my standing in her household. You have had very little time to disappoint her as a husband.
Challenge, but not an impossible one. The humor lasted only until they reached the morning room.
Lady Margaret Kingscote stood beside the hearth, tall and silver-haired, wearing violet silk despite the warmth of the June morning. Her face was composed rather than welcoming.
She looked first at Everard, then at Tabitha's borrowed gown, and finally at the plain gold ring on her hand. Everard bowed. Mother, Everard. Lady Margaret's gaze returned to Tabitha.
Miss Ainsley would now be incorrect. Mrs. Kingscote would be insufficient. Your Grace is proper, though I imagine it sounds strange. It does, Tabitha admitted.
Then we shall use it until it does not. Lady Margaret curtsied with the formal respect due a duchess. Tabitha returned it.
No embrace followed.
No declaration that she was already loved as a daughter. The absence of false warmth felt more respectful than kindness performed too quickly.
Everard has told me enough to understand that haste was necessary, Lady Margaret said. He has not told me enough to determine whether it was wise. I am not certain either, Tabitha replied.
Lady Margaret's eyes sharpened. Excellent. We begin without pretending certainty. Everard removed his gloves. I had expected at least one word in my defense. You married before informing me.
The surrogate's office was closing. Time has always been your most persuasive accomplice. Lady Margaret rang for the housekeeper.
When the woman arrived with a ring of keys, she addressed Tabitha directly. Her Grace's apartments are prepared. The phrase startled Tabitha. Her apartments, not a guest chamber.
Not a room granted until someone decided she had recovered. She followed the housekeeper upstairs with Lady Margaret beside her, and Everard several steps behind.
The suite contained a bedchamber, dressing room, and private sitting room overlooking a walled garden.
The furnishings were elegant but restrained, as though the rooms had been designed for a woman whose preferences had not yet been guessed. Beyond the bed stood a paneled door. Tabitha stopped.
Everard stopped with her. That connects with my apartments, he said. The housekeeper reached toward the handle. Which side holds the bolt? Tabitha asked. The woman's hand paused.
This side, Your Grace. Only this side? Yes. Tabitha opened the door. A short passage ended at another panel leading into Everard's rooms.
She closed it again, slid the bolt, and tested it twice. No one spoke. When she turned, Lady Margaret was watching her with grave attention.
Has anyone given orders concerning my health? Tabitha asked the housekeeper. No, Your Grace. Has anyone instructed the staff to prepare medicine, restrict visitors, or report my movements?
No. If such an order is given, I am to know before it is followed. The housekeeper looked briefly toward Everard. He stepped forward, not in front of Tabitha, but beside the writing table.
No medicine is to be brought to the Duchess unless she requests it or is first informed of it. No visitor is to be admitted to her without her knowledge.
No letter addressed to her is to be opened, withheld, or answered by another person. His voice remained calm, but every servant in the doorway straightened. Yes, Your Grace, the housekeeper said.
Tabitha looked at him. Even by you, especially by me. The answer did not erase the imbalance between a duke and the woman who had married him out of necessity. Nothing could erase it.
Yet he named the danger, instead of pretending rank made him harmless. After the servants withdrew, Tabitha placed her reticule on the writing desk. The crimson webbing was no longer inside.
It remained sealed in Mr. Latham's locked case, marked by 3 witnesses at the Crown and Mitre Inn. She removed the cream rosemary packet and laid it in the center drawer.
Her mother's faded words faced upward, for remembrance and for beginning again. Tabitha closed the drawer with both hands. Mary must be brought here, she said, not hidden in my apartments.
Protected openly. I have already sent a formal invitation in my mother's name, Everard said. Tabitha turned. When? Before we left the chapel. You assumed I would come here. No.
I assumed Sir Bertram should not be given the rest of the morning to isolate your sister. Lady Margaret moved toward the window. The invitation asks Mary to remain with me for the season.
Sir Bertram may refuse. He will want to, Everard said.
But refusing a Dowager Duchess's invitation immediately after accusing his niece of instability would create questions beyond his control. Tabitha understood the method beneath the courtesy.
No demand, no forced carriage, only a choice arranged so that cruelty would have to reveal itself to decline. Thank you, she said to Lady Margaret.
Do not thank me until Mary is under this roof, the older woman replied. Intentions are not results. By mid-afternoon, calling cards began arriving in silver trays.
Lady Margaret sorted them in the drawing-room while Tabitha sat opposite, with a cup of plain tea. Everard stood near the mantel, reading a note from Mr. Latham, confirming that the attested copy of Dr.
Harwood's preliminary certificate had been copied into his records. The original remained in the physician's papers.
There were cards from countesses, widows of generals, 2 bishops' daughters, and ladies who had never before acknowledged Tabitha's existence. Many bore penciled messages.
Lady Margaret handed her the first. Her ladyship hoped the Duchess had recovered from the agitation attending her marriage.
Another asked whether her Grace would receive callers, or whether conversation might overstimulate her. A third wondered if the ceremony had occurred during a nervous excitement.
Constance works quickly, Tabitha said. Constance works predictably, Lady Margaret replied. Predictability is useful. A footman entered with an unmarked envelope.
This was left without a card, Your Grace. He offered it to Tabitha unopened. She noticed that before anything else. No broken seal, no decision made on her behalf. The paper was heavy cream stock.
It resembled the stationery Sir Bertram favoured, but many London stationers sold the same weight and finish. Tabitha opened it with the small knife on the tray.
One sentence had been written in an unadorned hand. A locked door cannot prove the woman behind it is sane. The room seemed to narrow around the words. Everard did not take the note from her.
May I see it? He asked. Tabitha handed it over. He read it once and passed it to Lady Margaret. The paper resembles Sir Bertram's, Tabitha said. Resembles, Everard repeated. Not proves. Exactly. He had remembered the standard he demanded at the inn and applied it even when anger made certainty tempting. Mr. Latham should record when it arrived, she said.
The note remains yours unless you decide otherwise. He may examine it. I want the delivery time entered. Everard gave the instruction in her hearing.
Nothing left the room before she knew where it was going. Near dusk, a servant brought a reply from Quenby House. Sir Bertram had accepted Lady Margaret's invitation.
Mary would arrive the following morning. Relief struck Tabitha so sharply that she closed her eyes. Why did he agree? She asked.
Because 3 households learned of the invitation before it reached him, Lady Margaret said.
Gossip is unreliable as morality, but excellent as a witness. That night, Tabitha slid the bolt across the connecting door and slept without interruption.
The next morning, shortly after 10, Lady Margaret's carriage returned with Mary inside. Tabitha reached the hall before the butler could announce her.
Mary stepped down wearing the same pale dress she had worn at Quenby House, but her face changed when she saw Tabitha standing upright beneath the Wexborough crest. She did not run.
Sir Bertram had trained both sisters too well in public restraint. She crossed the hall quickly and caught Tabitha's hands.
You came back. Not in the way either of us expected. Mary looked at the ring, then toward Everard, who remained several paces away. She curtsied.
Your Grace. Miss Ainsley, he said, returning the courtesy. You are safe here. He did not call himself her guardian. He did not promise that no one would ever frighten her again.
He offered only what the house could honestly provide. Lady Margaret led Mary into the morning room. Once the doors closed, Mary's composure broke. Constance moved the blue vial, she said.
After you left, she took it from her dressing case and placed it inside a traveling case with silver bottles. She told her maid it must not be left where anyone careless could find it. Tabitha felt Everard's attention sharpen. Did you see what was inside? He asked.
No. Did you see her open it? No. Then what do you know? Mary looked at Tabitha before answering, that it was the same blue-stoppered vial I saw before.
That Constance hid it after the wedding. Nothing more. Tabitha tightened her fingers around her sister's hand. Mary had learned the distinction already.
Outside the windows, carriages continued to arrive with cards for the supposedly unstable Duchess. Inside Wexborough House, no one asked Mary to make her warning prettier than the truth. Mrs. Penrose
arrived at Wexborough House on the morning of June 17th, wearing a dark brown gown polished at the cuffs by years of use, and carrying herself with the careful dignity of a woman who had once
belonged comfortably in rooms like these. The butler announced her without hesitation.
Lady Margaret received her in the morning room as a guest, not as an innkeeper summoned to provide a useful memory. Tabitha saw Mrs. Penrose notice the distinction.
She also saw the widow glance toward the open doors, before choosing a chair from which the exit remained visible. Mary sat beside Lady Margaret. Everard stood near the window, while Mr.
Latham waited at a writing table with his notebook closed. No one had asked him to begin recording before Mrs. Penrose decided what she wished to say.
At the inn, Tabitha said, "You recognize the crimson repair." Mrs. Penrose folded her gloves once across her lap.
I recognize the method. Tell us only what you know. The widow inclined her head. After my husband died, his brother decided grief had made me incapable of understanding accounts.
I refused to sign away the lease on our home. 3 days later, I was taken to a private house beyond Highgate. Mary's fingers tightened around one another. Mrs.
Penrose noticed and looked directly at her. They called it rest.
That was the word used whenever they wished obedience to sound merciful. Tabitha felt the sentence settle somewhere beneath her ribs. Was Mr. Rook in charge?
Everard asked. Not then.
His uncle managed the house. Mr. Rook later took control of its subscriptions and arrangements. And the restraint? Tabitha asked. One of the leather straps cracked near the buckle.
An attendant brought crimson webbing and black thread. She told me idle hands encouraged difficult thoughts, so I was to repair it myself. Mrs.
Penrose's expression did not change, but her thumb pressed against the edge of one glove. I used 3 cross stitches, not because the method was special.
Because I hoped the repair would hold just long enough for me to work it loose later. Mary swallowed. Did you escape? Not that way.
My husband's old solicitor finally learned where I had been taken. Mrs. Penrose looked toward Mr. Latham.
A solicitor can be a useful man when he remembers that paper is not always truth. Latham accepted the rebuke without offense, and a dangerous one when he forgets. Tabitha leaned forward.
Could another person have used the same thread and stitches? Yes, Mrs. Penrose answered without delay. I cannot swear that the fragment you found belonged to a strap from that house.
I can swear that such restraints were used there, that crimson webbing and black thread were part of their repairs, and that Mr. Rook now profits from the place. Everard's gaze met Tabitha's.
No one said it was enough. That restraint mattered. Sir Bertram had spent months turning impressions into conclusions. They would not defeat him by doing the same.
Thank you, Tabitha said. Mrs.
Penrose gave a small, humorless smile. You need not thank me for remembering, no.
But I may thank you for refusing to make the memory larger than it is. For the first time, some of the tension left the widow's face.
Lady Margaret rang for tea, and the conversation paused until the servants had withdrawn. Mary looked toward Mrs. Penrose. Were you frightened all the time? Tabitha almost stopped her.
The question was too intimate. Mrs. Penrose answered before she could. No, that was the worst of it. Fear would come and go. Some mornings I felt ordinary.
Then they would say feeling ordinary proved I had forgotten how ill I was. Mary lowered her eyes.
Tabitha thought of Constance watching her drink, of Sir Bertram calling anger agitation, and of the unsigned note on heavy cream paper. A possible future had entered the room wearing a widow's plain gown. Everard did not offer comfort. He asked, "Would you recognize the carriage if you saw it?" "Not by the outside."
They changed vehicles often. The fixed padding inside was more consistent. Fixed? Tabitha asked. Panels along the walls, thick leather at the doors.
The wrist straps could be removed. That distinction sharpened the memory of the Quenby carriage.
Then the carriage may still carry part of what was prepared, even if the restraints are gone. Latham opened his notebook.
I have traced the vehicle to a yard near Edgware Road. Everard looked at Tabitha.
You do not have to come. I know. The yard may be unpleasant. So was the carriage. A brief warmth touched his eyes.
Then we leave after luncheon. The journey took less than an hour through thickening traffic. Tabitha sat beside Everard while Latham faced them. The carriage turned sharply near Oxford Street, and Everard offered his hand without comment. She placed her fingers against his only until the wheels steadied. He released her at once. No smile.
No claim. The quiet correctness of it unsettled her more than practiced gallantry would have done. The carriage yard smelled of leather, dust, and warm horses. Mr.
Hale, its master, was square-built and cautious, with sun-darkened skin, and the wary eyes of a man who had learned that powerful customers remembered favors, but forgot consequences.
He recognized the description of the dark blue carriage. It was hired for a private journey, he said. By whom? Latham asked. A servant. Whose servant, Mr.?
Hale looked toward Everard, then away. Mr. Rook's. Tabitha felt Mary's warning, Mrs. Penrose's memory, and the destination label draw one line between them. When was it hired? She asked.
June 14th, before 5 o'clock, before noon. Latham wrote the answer. What condition was it in when returned? Mr. Hale wiped one hand against his coat.
Sound enough. That was not what I asked, Tabitha said. His gaze shifted to her. She did not accuse him. She waited. The fixed panels were still in place, he said at last. Padded walls.
Thick leather inside the door. Those had been fitted before the hire and were not removed afterward. And the wrist restraints? Detachable.
They were gone when the carriage was put back into general use. Gone because they had been destroyed, Everard asked. Removed. By whom? My men, at the instruction of Mr. Rook's servant.
He said the fittings looked untidy and were to be replaced before another hire. Tabitha stepped nearer the carriage. The dark blue paint was dusty now. Its door stood open.
Inside,
The padded side panels remained exactly as she remembered them. The leather at the door had been cleaned, but the line where the wrist restraint had been fastened was still visible.
On-strap had been cut, she said. Mr. Hale's face changed. How do you know? I cut it. Silence crossed the yard. A young groom near the stable entrance stopped brushing a horse.
Latham closed his notebook. Will you put the hire and alterations in writing? Mr. Hale looked toward the groom, who had the same brown eyes. No. Why? Tabitha asked. Mr.
Rook holds my brother's note. My brother owns a small saddler's shop. If I sign against Rook, the debt will be called tomorrow. The shop will be taken.
His children will lose their roof. Everard reached inside his coat. I can settle the note. No, Tabitha said. Both men looked at her. She spoke to Mr. Hale.
Would you trust testimony purchased by a duke if it were offered against you? No, your grace. Neither will society.
Keep your statement until it is yours to give. Everard's hand remained inside his coat for one breath, then withdrew empty. Mr.
Hale stared at Tabitha as though Rank had behaved differently from what he had expected. The restraints weren't burned, he said. Not then. Latham's attention sharpened.
Where are they? I kept one. The leather was still usable, and the repair was odd. I thought it might serve as a pattern. Where is it now? Tabitha asked.
Fear closed over the answer before he spoke. In a tack cupboard. Everard took one step forward. Will you show us? Not today. Mr. Hale, Latham began. Tabitha raised one hand.
He has answered enough. Mr. Hale looked at her with something close to gratitude, and something more like shame.
If Rook learns I kept it, he'll demand it. Then decide what you are willing to risk before he does, Tabitha said.
They left without the restraint, without a signed statement, and without the easy certainty ducal money might have purchased.
In the carriage home, Everard sat opposite Tabitha, with one hand resting on the silver knob of his cane. You denied me a very satisfying use of wealth. You would have regretted it, probably.
And Sir Bertram would have said you bought a frightened man to support an unstable wife. His expression altered at the word unstable.
You are not what they call you. You do not know me well enough to know everything I am. No, he held her gaze.
But I know you refused an easy victory because it would make the truth weaker. The praise reached her because it was not tenderness. It was recognition.
Before Tabitha could answer, their carriage passed the end of the yard lane. A man in Rook's dark livery stood beside a hired horse, watching the tack room door. He saw the Wexborough carriage.
Then he turned toward Mr. Hale's office. By 10 o'clock on the morning of June 20th, the garden at Wexborough House had been arranged to look effortless, which meant that nearly 50 people had
labored since dawn to conceal every sign of labor. White cloths covered the long tables beneath striped awnings.
Silver urns stood beside dishes of rolls, fruit, cold meats, and small cakes glazed with sugar. Chairs had been placed according to rank.
Servants had been assigned exact paths between terrace and lawn. At the far end of the garden, a temporary platform waited for the secretary of the subscription supporting widows of naval officers.
Every detail suggested charity, order, and summer ease. Every guest understood that the real entertainment would be the new Duchess of Wexborough. Tabitha stood before the mirror in her dressing room, while her maid fastened the final hook of a pale green morning gown. It was the first garment made for her since the wedding.
The color was neither bridal nor mournful, which was precisely why she had chosen it. Mary sat near the window, twisting a ribbon between her fingers. "You don't have to go down," she said. "Lady."
Margaret can receive them, and every caller will leave believing I had to be hidden. They already believe whatever Constance tells them. Then they may learn that belief is not the same as
sight. Mary looked toward the closed connecting door. It remained unbolted during the day, though the Tabitha still controlled the bolt from her side.
What if Constance brings the vial? Then we notice what she does with it. You make that sound simple. Tabitha turned from the mirror. It is not simple.
Fear becomes less useless when it is given a task. A knock sounded at the outer door. Everard entered only after the maid admitted him.
He wore a dark blue coat and an ivory waistcoat, formal enough for the occasion, but without the glitter some men used when they wished rank to speak before they did. His gaze moved over Tabitha's face rather than her gown. Have you eaten? Half a roll. A reckless abundance. I was told duchesses are expected to show restraint, not with breakfast.
Only with money, opinions, and inconvenient truths. Mary laughed before she could stop herself. The sound startled her into silence, but Everard did not turn it into a triumph.
He simply offered Tabitha his arm. "Where do you want me?" he asked. "Beside me when we enter, and afterward, near enough to see."
"Not near enough to make me look guarded. That is a difficult distance. You own a large garden. Use it." A quick warmth touched his eyes.
"Your commands grow more ducal by the day. I learned from an expert. They descended together. Lady Margaret waited at the garden doors with Mary at her side."
Beyond them, conversation changed as soon as Tabitha appeared. Heads turned in a wave too disciplined to be called staring. Everard did not explain the marriage or defend his choice.
He introduced her to each arriving guest with the same untroubled certainty. Her Grace, the Duchess of Wexborough. Countesses curtsied. Baronets' wives smiled too brightly.
Ladies who had once passed Tabitha without acknowledgement now asked whether she found Wexborough House restful. "I sleep very well," Tabitha answered. "How fortunate," one woman said.
After so much excitement. Excitement is often tiring when other people insist upon naming it for you. The woman blinked and moved on. Tabitha felt Everard's attention from several paces away.
He had kept the distance she requested, near enough to see, not near enough to turn her into a protected object. The first half-hour passed without disaster.
Tabitha greeted patrons, asked the subscription secretary how pensions would be distributed, and declined to promise funds until Lady Margaret confirmed that the accounts had been reviewed.
Society had expected tears, confusion, or extravagant generosity designed to prove composure. Instead, she asked practical questions. The disappointment around her was almost amusing.
Shortly before 11, Constance arrived on Sir Bertram's arm. She wore a blue gown beneath a cream pelisse and carried a small wicker basket lined with white linen.
Sir Bertram's expression held the grave concern of a man attending a bedside rather than a charity breakfast. Montague Rook did not accompany them. His absence made Tabitha more alert, not less.
Constance curtsied deeply. "Your Grace, you look much recovered." "From what?" Tabitha asked. Constance's smile tightened.
"The agitation of your wedding. I found the ceremony clarifying." Sir Bertram stepped forward.
"He have worried for you. You have prepared efficiently." His gaze sharpened, but the arrival of the Countess of Belmere prevented him from answering. Constance lifted the basket.
"I brought restoratives for Her Grace the Dowager Duchess. Papa feared the warmth might trouble her." Lady Margaret looked toward the cloudless sky.
"I have survived 61 summers, but perhaps this one is unusually ambitious." Constance laughed because rank required it. A maid accepted the basket and carried it toward the refreshment table.
As the linen shifted, Tabitha saw a small blue stoppered vial nestled among several jars and a silver-rimmed medicine glass. A tiny chip marked the rim like a star. Mary saw it too.
The color drained from her face. Tabitha touched one finger to her wrist, the quiet signal they had agreed upon. "Do not react. Observe." The speeches began. The subscription secretary spoke of rents, pensions, and widows left with little income after husbands died in service. Tabitha listened.
When invited to pledge, she asked whether the funds were paid directly to the women or through male relatives. The secretary hesitated, then admitted the practice varied.
"Then the Wexborough subscription will depend upon the answer being improved," Tabitha said. A few ladies shifted in their chairs. Lady Margaret concealed approval behind her fan.
Everard did not smile, but his gaze rested on Tabitha with unmistakable recognition. When refreshments were served, a countess wearing jeweled combs approached.
"Your Grace, forgive an impertinent question. That depends upon the question. Do you remember the wedding clearly?" The conversation nearest them thinned.
Constance watched from beneath the awning. Sir Bertram stood beside her with an untouched cup. Everard was speaking to an admiral's widow 10 paces away, yet his attention had already shifted.
Tabitha looked back at the Countess. "I remember it better than many brides remember their settlements." Someone nearby choked on a laugh. The Countess colored.
Everard's own laughter was brief and genuine. It moved through the garden with more force than a defense would have done.
For one suspended moment, Tabitha was not a woman proving that her mind belonged to her. She was simply herself, and her husband had understood the joke. The tension in her shoulders eased.
A serving maid approached carrying a tray of orgeat. Every glass on it was plain. She placed one beside Tabitha's plate. The drink had begun to warm in the sun, but had not been touched.
"Thank you," Tabitha said. Before she could lift it, Constance appeared at the maid's elbow. "The Duchess's drink is warm." The girl looked down.
"I can bring another, Miss Quenby. Fetch a clean napkin from the house. I'll exchange it." The maid hesitated.
"There are fresh glasses on the side table. Then you needn't keep her Grace waiting." Constance's tone remained sweet, but the instruction was unmistakable. The maid glanced toward Tabitha.
Tabitha gave no sign. The girl hurried toward the terrace. Constance lifted the plain glass from beside Tabitha's plate and turned toward the refreshment table.
For several seconds, her body blocked the basket from view. Sir Bertram began speaking loudly to Lady Margaret about naval pensions, drawing the nearest patrons into conversation.
Mary stood rigid beside a bank of roses. Everard had noticed the interruption. He remained where Tabitha had asked him to remain, near enough to see, not near enough to make the choice for her.
Constance turned back, carrying a cooler glass beaded with moisture. "You must take care in the heat," she said. She placed it before Tabitha. The silver rim caught the light.
A small star-shaped chip marked the edge, the medicine glass from the basket. Tabitha's pulse slowed rather than quickened. Fear had found its task. "How kind," she said.
Constance's smile did not reach her eyes. Refusing the glass immediately would give her cousin the story she wanted. Tabitha would become suspicious, irrational, frightened by an ordinary drink.
Yet drinking freely would surrender control of the only thing she could still measure. She lifted the glass just high enough to smell it. Orange water and almonds.
Beneath them lay something warmer and more bitter, nearly hidden. She touched the liquid to her lips. One small swallow crossed her tongue.
The same bitter heat she had tasted in the cordial at Quenby House spread down her throat. Tabitha lowered the glass with deliberate care and looked directly at Constance.
Her cousin was watching not to see whether Tabitha enjoyed the drink, but to see whether she had swallowed. When their eyes met, Constance's smile became perfectly still.
Tabitha kept her eyes on Constance and set the silver-rimmed glass beside her plate. For one brief moment the garden remained unchanged. Sunlight shone on white cloths. Silver touched porcelain. A widow near the roses laughed at something Everard had said. Then warmth spread through Tabitha's throat and settled beneath her breastbone with unnatural weight. Her fingers lost certainty first.
She drew them away from the glass before anyone could see them tremble. "You look pale," Constance said. "The sun is warm." Tabitha intended the answer to sound ordinary.
The words came slowly, as though someone else had delayed them before allowing them past her lips. Constance leaned closer. "Do you know where you are?" The question was too quick, prepared.
Tabitha looked at her cousin and understood that the drink was only half the trap. The other half was the audience. Wexborough House. And what day is it? Several nearby guests turned.
Sir Bertram stopped speaking to Lady Margaret. "Saturday," Tabitha said. Her tongue felt thick. "June 20th. Constance smiled with false relief. "There, Papa."
"She knows us." "I never said I did not." Tabitha reached for the edge of the table. It seemed to shift beneath her hand even though she knew it had not moved. Her limbs felt packed with wet sand.
Across the lawn Everard had gone still. He did not rush toward her. She had asked him not to hover, and even now he waited for a sign that she wanted him near.
She saw the restraint in the set of his shoulders. Constance lowered herself into the chair beside Tabitha without invitation. "Perhaps the wedding excitement has confused you again."
You always became distressed when your mother was ill, didn't you? The shuttered room where her mother had suffered flashed through Tabitha's mind. The measured drops. The folded linen.
The fear of giving too much medicine. Constance knew the memory would wound her. She also knew grief could be made to resemble disorientation before those who wished to see it.
"Don't speak of her. You see?" Constance turned slightly toward the watching guests.
The smallest reference unsettles her. Sir Bertram approached with the grave expression he wore when he wanted judgment to resemble mercy.
"Tabitha, come away from the table." She tried to rise before he could reach her. Her knees weakened. The chair scraped over the gravel. A murmur moved through the garden.
Someone whispered, "An episode." Tabitha fixed her gaze on the star-shaped chip. She had to preserve one clear thing. Constance had exchanged the glass. Constance's thumb had rested near the rim.
"Not my glass," she said. The words blurred together. "What did she say?" a lady asked. Constance lifted both hands. "I don't know."
She's not making sense. Tabitha reached for the glass, intending to push it toward Everard. Her hand struck the base instead.
It fell from the table, landed on the gravel, and rolled beneath a bench without shattering. Pale orgeat spread between the stones. Sir Bertram stepped closer.
You require rest. His hand moved toward her arm. Tabitha recoiled. The motion was instinctive and sharp. Gasps answered it. To the watching guests, fear became evidence.
Sir Bertram drew the attested copy of Dr. Harwood's preliminary certificate from inside his coat. This is precisely what we tried to prevent.
Her physician recommended private rest if her agitation worsened. Lady Margaret crossed the lawn.
A recommendation made without examining her. Your Grace, this is a family matter. She is my family. Tabitha tried to speak, but nausea rose suddenly. She pressed one hand over her mouth.
The garden tilted. Everard reached her before she slipped from the chair. He stopped close enough to catch her, but did not touch her at once. Tabitha. His voice cut through the whispering.
Look at me. She found his face with effort. May I lift you? She nodded. That small movement consumed the last of her strength.
Everard placed one arm behind her shoulders and the other beneath her knees. He lifted her carefully against the dark cloth of his coat. No one spoke loudly now. The garden is closed, he said.
His voice did not rise, yet every servant moved. Every guest will leave a direction where they may be reached.
No tray, basket, glass, bottle, napkin, or serving vessel is to be removed. Constance stood. Surely you're not accusing me. Everard looked at her once.
I have accused no one. She drank ordinary orgeat. Then ordinary questions should not alarm you. Sir Bertram held up the certificate. She must be taken somewhere quiet, mister.
Rook's house is prepared to receive women in this condition. Tabitha felt Everard's arms tighten with controlled anger.
She will not leave Wexborough House. You cannot know what she needs. I know she said no. Sir Bertram followed as Everard carried her toward the terrace.
She is not capable of deciding. Tabitha forced her eyes open. No, she whispered. Everard heard. He turned at the garden doors. You have her answer. Inside, cooler air struck Tabitha's face.
Lady Margaret ordered the nearest drawing room cleared and sent for Dr. Harwood. Mary appeared in the corridor, white with fear. Tabitha tried to reassure her, but speech would not obey.
The last thing she saw clearly was Constance standing beyond the glass doors, with one hand pressed against the wicker basket, while servants began searching the garden. Tabitha woke later in her bedchamber to lamplight and the sour taste of sickness. A basin stood beside the bed. Her maid supported her while she drank water in careful sips.
Voices came from the sitting room. Dr. Harwood spoke first. The symptoms are consistent with a strong sleeping preparation.
The quantity may have been small, but the effect was intensified by an empty stomach. Could it have been accidental? Everard asked.
Many household remedies contain laudanum. She did not request medicine. No one says she did. Tabitha wanted to tell them about the chip. She wanted to say Constance had sent the maid away. Her tongue felt heavy. Glass, she managed. Everard appeared beyond the bed curtain but remained outside it. The glass has not yet been found. Panic moved through her faster than the drug.
She shook her head. Star. What star? Chip. Her eyes closed before she could explain.
In the garden below, the serving maid returned to the east table, after Constance ordered the servants to clear the spilled drink and broken pieces. The girl remembered where the glass had rolled.
Beneath the bench, half concealed by the shadow of a folded cloth, the silver rim caught the fading light. The glass had not broken. A small star-shaped chip marked the edge.
She wrapped it in her clean apron and carried it into the house without telling Constance. Near midnight, Tabitha lay in a heavy, uneven sleep.
Everard sat outside her chamber with his coat unbuttoned and his cravat loosened, but he did not enter. Lady Margaret found him there after speaking with the maid.
The glass was recovered, she said. It came from Miss Quenby's basket. Everard closed his eyes briefly.
Harwood says laudanum can confuse memory. It can. Tabitha believed the carriage was meant for Rook's house before anyone else saw it.
She believed the restraint and the certificate were connected. What if fear joined facts that were never connected? Lady Margaret's expression hardened.
Do you hear yourself? I am trying to understand what happened. No, you are trying to make uncertainty comfortable. Dr. Harwood emerged from the adjoining room.
Everard rose and lowered his voice. Doctor, could the drug and her prior fear have caused her to imagine a wider conspiracy around the carriage? Lady Margaret stood in the shadow beyond the door.
Everard did not see her. She heard every word. By dawn, Tabitha's sleep had lightened. The corridor was quiet enough to carry voices.
She opened her eyes as Lady Margaret answered her son with a coldness that reached through the closed chamber door. "You asked whether she was mad before you asked whether she had been poisoned."
Nearly 18 hours after the garden breakfast, Tabitha woke to a room dimmed against the morning light, and the steady ache of a body that no longer trusted its own weight. Her mouth was dry.
Her stomach turned when she moved. The curtains had been drawn, but a narrow blade of sun reached across the carpet and made her close her eyes again.
Someone had placed a glass of water on the bedside table, with a folded cloth beside it. No medicine stood there, no bottle, no spoon. That absence mattered.
Her maid rose quietly from a chair near the window. "Your Grace?" Tabitha opened her eyes. "What time is it?" "Almost 6 in the morning. Sunday?" "Yes, Your Grace."
June 21st. The date held, the room held. Her ring remained on her hand. She lifted it slightly and watched the gold catch the pale light.
She remembered Constance's still smile, the silver rim, the star-shaped chip, Everard asking permission before lifting her, and Lady Margaret's voice in the corridor.
You asked whether she was mad before you asked whether she had been poisoned. Where is the Duke? In the sitting room. He hasn't entered. The maid hesitated.
Her Grace the Dowager Duchess is there as well. Tabitha sat up slowly. Weakness rolled through her legs before she had even placed them on the floor. The maid moved forward.
"May I help?" "Yes." Tabitha accepted an arm and crossed the short distance to the chair near the hearth. The effort left her breathing shallowly. Her head throbbed behind her eyes.
She did not mistake improvement for recovery. "Ask them to come in," she said. Both of them. Lady Margaret entered first. Everard followed and stopped just inside the door.
His face showed the exhaustion of a man who had not slept, but Tabitha had no room yet for compassion. "Dr. Harwood says the weakness may last another day," Lady Margaret said. "He will return after breakfast. I don't want medicine brought without my knowledge." "It won't be," Everard said. His voice was careful. Tabitha looked at him.
"Did you ask whether I imagined the carriage?" Silence answered before he did. Lady Margaret did not rescue him. "Yes," Everard said. "I asked whether the drug and fear might have caused you to connect facts that were not connected. Before you asked whether I had been poisoned." His jaw tightened. "Yes. The admission was clean."
It did not hurt less for being honest. Tabitha rested both hands in her lap so he would not see how weak they felt. "At the chapel, you believed me before anyone else had verified the carriage. You
Believed enough to act. I did. And yesterday, when I could not speak clearly, you gave the physician authority over whether my fear was reasonable. I was trying to understand what had
happened. No. You were trying to make uncertainty less uncomfortable. Lady Margaret's words had reached him before dawn. Tabitha used them because they were true. He did not defend himself.
You are right. That does not repair it. I know. He remained near the door. He had not stepped closer. The restraint might have moved her if it had not arrived after the wound."
"You offered to take me to the country?" she asked. "Yes, Kingsfold Park or the smaller house near Richmond. Somewhere beyond the reach of callers. No. Tabitha, you need rest. Rest has been."
The word used whenever someone wished to move me where I could not be heard. That is not what I mean. It may not be what you mean.
It is still what the action would resemble. She paused until the nausea eased. "I will remain at Wexborough House." Everard inclined his head. "Then you remain. I will keep my title."
I will continue to receive my own letters. I will lead the reconstruction of what happened. Agreed. No servant is to be dismissed because a recollection is incomplete.
No witness is to be questioned alone. No one in this house is to use the word episode for what happened yesterday. Agreed. Lady Margaret and Mr.
Latham will be present for every formal statement. Agreed. His answers came without bargaining. Tabitha looked down at the wedding ring.
I am not ending the marriage. Something changed in his face, but he did not move. I understand. You should also understand that I still trust what you did at the chapel.
"I do not trust what you do with doubt." The words struck him more deeply than accusation might have done. He lowered his gaze once, then met hers again. "You should not." No plea followed.
No promise that he would never fail again. Only recognition. Tabitha rose carefully. The maid reached for her, but she steadied herself against the chair.
She crossed to the paneled connecting door, drew the bolt, and tested it. The metal slid into place with a quiet finality. Everard watched without protest. "This door remains closed," she said.
Until I open it. Yes, she did not remove the ring. That distinction mattered too. Lady Margaret looked between them, then turned toward the outer door.
The maid who served the orgeat has asked to speak. She has been waiting downstairs since dawn. Tabitha's legs trembled. Bring her to the sitting room.
Give me 10 minutes. You need not do this now, Everard said. I do. He started to answer, then stopped. I will wait outside unless you ask for me. You will attend.
You will not question her. Understood. 10 minutes later, Tabitha sat in the private sitting room with Lady Margaret on one side and Mr. Latham at the writing table.
Everard stood near the far window. Mary had been asked to remain upstairs because her own testimony would be taken separately. The serving maid entered holding a folded apron in both hands.
She looks scarcely older than Mary. Sit, Tabitha said. The girl remained standing. I'm sorry, Your Grace. For what? I left the table when Miss Quenby told me to fetch a napkin. Did you know?
She meant to change the glass? No. Did you see her put anything into it? No. Then say only what you saw. The girl swallowed. I carried a tray of plain glasses.
I set one beside your Grace's plate. Miss Quenby said it was warm and told me to fetch a clean napkin. When I came back, the plain glass was gone.
A silver-rimmed glass was there instead. What made you notice it? The rim caught the light. There was a little chip shaped like a star. Did you see where Miss Quenby obtained it? No.
Her body was between me and the basket. What happened after I dropped it? It rolled beneath the bench.
Later, when the servants were told to clear the garden, Miss Quenby said the broken pieces should be thrown away. But I knew it hadn't broken. Her hands tightened around the apron.
I found it under the bench. I wrapped it before anyone else touched it. Lady Margaret leaned forward. Where has it been since? With me, Your Grace.
I locked it in my box and slept with the key on a ribbon around my neck. The girl unfolded the apron. Inside lay the silver-rimmed glass. Dried sweetness clouded the bottom. The star-shaped chip remained exactly where Tabitha remembered it. No one touched it. Mr. Latham rose and placed a clean wooden tray on the table. "Will you set it there yourself?" he asked.
The maid did. Latham recorded the time, place, and names present. The girl described how she had found it and where it had remained.
Lady Margaret then lifted the tray by its handles and carried it to Latham's open evidence box. In full view of everyone present, she placed the glass inside. Latham closed the lid, tied it with
tape, sealed the crossing, and wrote a receipt naming the maid as first possessor after recovery, Lady Margaret as transferring witness, and himself as final custodian.
He did not place it in the compartment containing the crimson fragment. The glass remained separately sealed. Tabitha watched the procedure until the final knot was tied.
"You did well," she told the maid. The girl's eyes filled. I was frightened. Courage doesn't become worthless because it arrives frightened. The maid looked at her then, not as a duchess and not
as a woman who had collapsed before 50 guests, but as someone who had made fear useful. Latham closed the evidence case. An apothecary may be able to identify the nature of the residue, he said.
You won't be able to tell us who added it, and perhaps not the exact quantity. Then he will say exactly that, Tabitha replied. Everard remained by the window. He had not spoken once.
When Tabitha rose, he moved as if to help, then stopped before extending his hand. She saw the choice and passed him without taking it. Behind her, the sealed glass rested in Latham's custody.
Beyond the wall, the connecting door remained bolted.
By the morning of June 22nd, Tabitha could cross her sitting room without assistance, though the effort left a fine trembling in her knees that she refused to disguise as strength.
She had learned too recently what happened when others interpreted a woman's body before listening to her words. The curtains remained half drawn against the light.
On the writing table lay 3 sheets headed in her own hand. What I know, what others saw, and what remains uncertain. Mr. Latham sat opposite with his notebook closed.
Lady Margaret occupied the chair nearest the hearth.
Everard stood beside the bookcase, far enough away that Tabitha could forget his rank if she wished, and close enough that she knew he had not left. The garden maid entered first.
Her eyes went at once to the sealed evidence box on Latham's table, then to Tabitha. "You won't be asked to remember anything you didn't see," Tabitha said.
"I know, Your Grace. Begin with the first glass. The girl drew breath. I carried plain glasses of orgeat from the house."
I set one beside Your Grace's plate.
Was there silver on the rim? No. Was it chipped? No. Then what happened? Miss Quenby said it was warm and sent me for a clean napkin.
When I returned, the plain glass was gone. The silver-rimmed one was in its place. Did you see Miss Quenby carry it from the basket? No.
Her back was toward me. Did you see her pour anything into it? No. Did you see anyone else touch it before I drank? The maid thought before answering. No, but I was away from the table.
I can't say no one did. Tabitha nodded. That is enough. The girl's shoulders lowered slightly. She had expected questions designed to trap her into certainty.
Tabitha dismissed her with thanks, then asked Mary to enter. Mary looked stronger than she had, on the day she arrived at Wexborough House, but the sight of the evidence box tightened her mouth.
I saw the blue stoppered vial in Constance's dressing case before the wedding, she said. I saw it again in the basket at the garden breakfast. Did you see her open it? Tabitha asked.
No. Did you see her pour from it? No. Did you see what became of it after the breakfast? Mary shook her head. No. Then that is what we know. Mary looked toward Everard.
But it matters. It may, Tabitha said. A clue can matter without becoming proof. The distinction disappointed Mary, but she accepted it. Tabitha saw that acceptance and felt an unexpected ache.
Mary was learning caution, because carelessness had nearly cost them both their freedom. Lady Margaret dismissed her gently, then signaled to Latham.
He opened the evidence box in the presence of everyone named on the receipt. The seal remained unbroken.
The star-chipped glass rested where it had been placed, its silver rim dulled by dried sweetness.
An apothecary from Bond Street entered with his ledger under one arm and examined the box before touching anything.
He warmed a small portion of the residue, smelled it, and tested it with methods he explained only as far as honesty allowed. Tabitha watched his face rather than his hands.
Men often announce certainty first with posture. This man did not. The residue is consistent with laudanum mixed into a sweetened drink, he said at last. Strong laudanum? Latham asked.
Stronger than one would expect in ordinary orgeat. Can you state the exact quantity? Tabitha asked. No, Your Grace.
Much of the liquid was spilled, and what remains has dried. Can you say who added it? No. Can you say when it was added? No. The apothecary glanced toward the glass.
I can say only that an opiate preparation was present in what remained. Then write exactly that, Tabitha said. He did.
When the statement was signed, Latham resealed the box with a fresh strip of tape laid across the original record so that every opening remained visible. The apothecary then opened his ledger. Mr.
Latham asked whether anyone connected with Mr. Rook had purchased a strong sleeping draught before the breakfast. His finger moved down a column of entries. 3 days earlier, a servant in Mr.
Rook's livery purchased a concentrated laudanum preparation. Everard's head lifted. Does the entry name Rook? It names the servant and records payment to Mr.
Rook's account. Does that prove this preparation entered the Duchess's glass? Latham asked.
No. Does it prove the blue vial contained the same preparation? No. Tabitha felt the room waiting for disappointment. Instead, she wrote the fact beneath what others saw.
It establishes access, she said. Nothing more. Everard moved toward the table when her hand tightened around the pencil.
She had been writing for nearly an hour, and fatigue had begun to blur the neatness of her letters. He stopped before reaching for it. The pause was so small that no one else might have noticed.
The guest list, Tabitha said. Move it nearer, please. He did, no question, no helpful correction, no attempt to take the task from her.
Their fingers did not touch, yet the moment held more intimacy than the polite hand he had offered on the chapel steps. Tabitha turned back to the reconstruction. She placed the serving-maid at the terrace path, Constance beside the basket, Sir Bertram near Lady Margaret, Mary by the roses, and Everard 10 paces away with the Admiral's widow. She did not rely on the broken sequence of her own drugged memory. She used what each person had seen before the symptoms began. By noon, one conclusion stood clear.
Constance had the opportunity to exchange the glass. Rook's servant had purchased a strong draught. The recovered residue contained laudanum. None of those facts alone proved the entire design.
Together, they made accident less plausible. What is missing? Everard asked. Tabitha looked at the third sheet. The restraint, the carriage docket in original form.
A witness willing to connect Rookie's servant to the hire. And something that explains why Sir Bertram arrived with Dr. Harwood's certificate ready in his coat. Latham closed his notebook.
I will return to Mr. Hale. Without money, Tabitha said. Without threats, Everard added. Latham looked between them.
You agree more often than either of you appears to enjoy. It is a temporary defect, Tabitha said. Everard's mouth almost curved, but the humor did not soften what remained between them.
The connecting door was still bolted. His mistake was still present. So was the fact that he had obeyed every boundary since.
On June 23rd, Latham went alone to the carriage yard near Edgware Road. Mr. Hale met him beside the office rather than in the tack room.
The yard was busy, but Rook's liveried man was no longer visible. That absence did not reassure either of them. You asked whether I kept the old restraint, Hale said.
I did. Where is it now? Still in the tack cupboard. Has anyone tried to remove it? Hale looked toward the lane. Rook's man came yesterday.
He asked whether any old fittings remained from the blue carriage. What did you tell him? That my men clear useless leather every week. Was that true? Not about this strap. Latham waited.
Hale rubbed one thumb over the side of his forefinger, a craftsman's gesture made without thought. The cut edge is still there. Crimson repair, 3 black stitches.
I kept it because the work was peculiar, and because part of me knew the order to replace everything had come too quickly. Will you transfer it into my custody? Not yet. Mr. Hale, if Rookie's
servant returns, the object may disappear. And if I hand it to you, my brother's debt will be called before supper. The Duke will protect you from retaliation. Protection is not the same as
undoing ruin after it begins. Latham could not deny that. He took no paper from his case. He made no promise using another man's fortune. What would allow you to speak? He asked.
Hale looked toward the tackroom door. Witnesses. Not ducal servants alone. Mrs. Penrose, perhaps. A parish man.
Someone Rook cannot dismiss as bought. That can be arranged, and I decide when. Yes. Hale's face tightened with relief and dread. Then give me one day. Latham left the yard before dusk.
That evening, a stable boy delivered a folded note to Wexborough House without entering. It bore no seal, only Hale's name written across the outside.
Latham opened it in Tabitha's sitting room, while Everard and Lady Margaret stood witness. The message contained one sentence. If I speak, he will destroy my brother.
If I remain silent, he will destroy the strap.
On the morning of June 24th, a printed notice arrived with the breakfast post and altered the shape of every question still waiting in Tabitha's sitting room.
Lady Margaret read it once, then placed it beside the 3 evidence lists without comment. Saint.
Anselm's Chapel would host a charity sermon on Sunday in support of Montague Rook's private house beyond Highgate. Subscriptions would be gathered immediately afterward.
Sir Bertram Quenby had agreed to speak on the duties families owed to distressed female relations. Tabitha read the notice twice.
The paper was clean, the wording benevolent, and the names respectable enough to make coercion sound like mercy. They mean to make the house untouchable, Mary said.
She stood beside the window, her hands flat against the sill. If bishops, daughters, and magistrates subscribe, no one will believe what misses. Penrose says, some will believe, Lady Margaret replied. Many will prefer not to. Everard had entered only after Tabitha invited him.
He stood near the mantel, not at the head of the room, while Mr. Latham examined the printer's mark. Rook is moving before Hale decides, he said.
The sermon gives him public virtue before we can give anyone private doubt. Then we do not answer privately, Tabitha said. Everard looked at her.
You want the chapel. The certificate was used there to stop my marriage. Reverend Folly established there that I understood my choice.
Now Rookie intends to use the same place to sanctify the house prepared to receive me. She laid one finger on the notice. If we confront them elsewhere, they will call it a family dispute. At St. Anselm's, the people being asked for money must hear what their money may support. Latham closed the notice inside his folder.
A public accusation without the restraint could be dangerous. Then we do not accuse beyond what we can prove. Hale may still refuse. Then he refuses. Everard's gaze sharpened.
And if the strap disappears? Tabitha looked at him. The question had arrived sooner than she intended, but perhaps there was no honest reason to delay it. Lady Margaret. Mary, Mr.
Latham, may I speak with the Duke alone? Lady Margaret rose first. She took Mary's arm and guided her toward the outer door.
Latham gathered the notice, but left the 3 evidence sheets on the table. When the room had emptied, Everard remained where he was. The connecting door beyond Tabitha's bedchamber was still bolted.
That closed passage existed between them, even here, unseen but exact. Tabitha sat beside the writing table. I need 3 answers. Ask them. Will you believe me if Dr.
Harwood refuses to withdraw his opinion. Everard did not answer quickly. She watched him resist the instinct to give comfort before thought. Yes. Will you believe me if Mr.
Hale refuses to testify? Yes. Will you believe me if the restraint is destroyed before Sunday? His face changed.
Not because the answer differed, but because he understood what she was truly asking. Yes. Tabitha folded her hands. Why? Everard looked toward the evidence lists.
Because none of those losses would alter what I already know. You described the carriage before anyone confirmed it.
You identified the padding, the detachable strap, the destination, and the crimson repair. Mrs. Penrose recognized the method without being prompted. Hale confirmed the carriage, Rook's servant, and the removed fittings. The maid confirmed the glass exchange. The residue confirmed laudanum. Each fact has limits.
Their limits do not make your honesty disappear. You knew many of those things before you asked Doctor
Harwood whether I imagined the conspiracy. I did. Then why did you ask? He turned fully toward her. Because I wanted a professional category that would make uncertainty less personal.
If Harwood, said the drug, confused you, I could tell myself I had not failed to believe my wife.
I had merely deferred to knowledge. And what had you actually done? Used his authority to avoid my own judgment. The answer was not polished. It cost him something to say it without defense.
Tabitha felt the truth of that cost, but she did not soften the question. If we go to the chapel, you will not speak first. Agreed. You will not explain my suffering to the congregation.
Agreed. You will not force Hale to appear, settle his brother's debt, or threaten Rookie's servant. Agreed. You will not ask for my forgiveness before witnesses. A shadow of pain crossed his
expression. I won't. And you will admit what you asked Dr. Harwood. This time the silence lasted longer. Everard's rank had taught rooms to wait for him. Tabitha waited without yielding.
Publicly? He asked. Yes. Before or after the evidence? After I have spoken. Your admission must not become the reason people believe me. He lowered his head once.
Then I will speak after you, and only if you call upon me. Tabitha studied him. You agree easily. No. His voice remained quiet.
I agree deliberately. There is a difference, a considerable one.
Ease would mean I had learned nothing. The space between them altered, not enough to close, but enough to become something other than absence. Everard's hand rested on the mantel.
He did not reach toward her. You asked why I will believe you if the evidence fails, he said.
May I ask one question in return? 1. Will you believe that I can change if no one certifies it for you? Tabitha's breath caught. The answer was not yet yes. It was not no either.
I will observe what you do. A faint, rueful warmth touched his mouth. That is fair. It is more than fair.
It is the standard you gave me at the inn. Then I deserve it. A knock sounded at the outer door. Latham entered carrying 2 letters and a sealed packet addressed in Dr. Harwood's hand.
Everard stepped back, and the private space between them became a room of evidence again. One reply is from Reverend Folly, Latham said.
He will not prevent the sermon, but he will permit questions after subscriptions are invited. He insists the chapel remain orderly. It will, Tabitha said. The second, from Dr.
Harwood. Latham broke the outer seal after Tabitha nodded and read aloud. The physician agreed to attend on Sunday.
He would bring the original preliminary certificate, dated June 14th, every paper supplied by Sir Bertram, and his surgery daybook recording deliveries, calls, and summonses.
Harwood added that he still believed Tabitha had suffered a nervous disturbance complicated by an opiate. He did not yet concede conspiracy. Then he will state that, Tabitha said.
Latham turned to the sealed packet lying beneath the letter. This was enclosed separately. Harwood says it is a summary copied from his surgery clerk's daybook.
The original daybook remains with him. He opened the packet. Inside lay one sheet listing the physician's movements on June 20th. At 10 minutes past 10, Dr.
Harwood had left his surgery to attend an elderly patient in Hanover Square. At 20 minutes past 10, while he was absent, a messenger from Quenby House had delivered a sealed family memorandum. The clerk entered the sender, the time, and the instruction that Dr. Harwood was to retain it until summoned.
At 12 minutes past noon, a second messenger arrived from Wexborough House, reporting that the Duchess had collapsed in the garden. Tabitha read the Times again.
The memorandum had reached Harwood's surgery before she had swallowed from the altered glass. Does Harwood say what it contained? Everard asked. No, Latham replied.
He says the packet remained sealed until after he returned from Wexborough House. He will bring it with the daybook on Sunday. Tabitha looked toward the printed notice for Ruki's sermon.
The carriage had been ordered before she refused care. The preliminary certificate had been signed before she was examined.
Now Sir Bertram had sent a sealed account to the physician before the garden had given him anything to account for. They prepared more than a story, she said.
They prepared the time at which it would become true. Latham folded the summary. We cannot know that until the memorandum is opened and identified. No, Tabitha said.
But on Sunday we will. Outside, St. Anselm's bell began to mark the noon hour.
On the table between them, the clerk's entry remained clear. Quenby memorandum received at 10:20 in the morning, nearly 2 hours before the Duchess of Wexborough collapsed.
On the morning of June 25th, Sir Bertram arrived at Wexborough House without an appointment, and demanded that Mary be returned to Quenby House before noon.
Lady Margaret received him in the blue drawing-room with both doors open and 3 servants within sight. Tabitha sat beside Mary. Everard remained near the mantel, silent by prior agreement.
Sir Bertram looked first at Mary, then at the witnesses. This display is unnecessary. Then your request should survive it, Lady Margaret said.
Mary is my responsibility. I'm 17, Mary replied. Her voice shook, but she did not lower it.
And you are a child who has been influenced by a frightened woman. Tabitha felt Mary's hand tense beneath hers. She did not answer for her. Sir Bertram stepped closer.
You will return home, and this confusion will end. Mary rose. I'm not returning. You do not understand what has happened. I saw the carriage being prepared.
I saw Constance's blue vial before the wedding and again in her basket. I heard you say my sister would become easier to manage once she was gone. Sir Bertram's face hardened.
You heard fragments and invented a meaning. Mary swallowed. Fear doesn't make my memory your property. The room became very still.
Everard did not move toward her, but his attention sharpened with unmistakable approval. Sir Bertram turned on Tabitha. You have taught her insolence. No, Tabitha said.
I stopped teaching her obedience. Your marriage has encouraged delusions of authority. My age gave me authority over myself.
My marriage merely made it more difficult for you to ignore. Lady Margaret rose. Miss Ainsley has declined your invitation.
You may leave. Sir Bertram looked toward Everard, perhaps expecting a man to overrule the women. Everard met his gaze.
You have heard her answer. You will regret making an enemy of a magistrate. A magistrate should regret threatening a household because a young woman said no. Sir Bertram left without bowing.
His footsteps crossed the marble hall, controlled until the front doors closed. Only then did Mary sit down again. Her hands had begun to tremble. Tabitha covered them with her own. You did not have to be fearless, she said. You only had to answer. Before Mary could reply, the garden maid was announced.
The girl entered carrying a folded paper sealed with a spot of cheap red wax. Miss Quenby came to my mother's lodging yesterday, she said.
She offered £20 and a place in Bath if I left London before Sunday. Latham, who had been waiting in the adjoining library, was summoned.
He examined the paper without touching the writing. The offer was unsigned, but the hand resembled notes Constance had previously sent to Wexborough House. Resembles, Tabitha said.
Does not prove. No, Latham agreed. But the maid can testify who placed it in her hand. The girl nodded.
She said no one would remember which glass had silver around it after a few weeks. And what did you tell her? Tabitha asked.
That I remembered the star-shaped chip. Latham recorded the time, place, and manner of delivery. The maid placed the paper into a clean cover.
He sealed it in a compartment separate from the glass and the crimson fragment. Before noon, a note arrived from Dr. Harwood, asking to come earlier than Sunday.
He had reconsidered after reading his surgery daybook beside Sir Bertram's memorandum. The matter should not wait for a sermon, he wrote.
He arrived that afternoon carrying a locked dispatch case, and his surgery clerk, a narrow-faced young man, whose discomfort made him more credible than confidence would have done.
Harwood placed 3 items on the table. The first was the original preliminary certificate dated June 14th. Its wording matched the attested copy Sir Bertram had brought to the chapel.
It recommended private rest if nervous agitation worsened. It did not record an examination. It did not mention the garden breakfast. I signed this upon Sir Bertram's account, Harwood said.
I had not seen Miss Ainsley. The Duchess of Wexborough, Lady Margaret corrected. Harwood inclined his head. The Duchess of Wexborough. The second item was his surgery day book. The clerk identified his own entry at 10:20 on the morning of June 20th. A messenger from Quenby House had delivered a sealed family memorandum with instructions that Dr.
Harwood retain it until summoned. At 12:12, a messenger from Wexborough House reported that Tabitha had collapsed in the garden. Did you open the memorandum when it arrived? Latham asked.
No, Harwood said. I was attending a patient. I opened it after returning from Wexborough House that evening. Was the seal intact? Yes. The third item was the memorandum itself.
Sir Bertram's name appeared at the bottom, though the body had been written by another hand. Harwood read it aloud.
It described Tabitha as failing to recognize relatives, speaking incoherently about a poisoned glass, recoiling from family assistance, and requiring immediate removal to Rookie's private house.
Each event was written as though it had already happened. Yet the packet had been delivered nearly 2 hours before Constance exchanged the glass.
Tabitha listened until Harwood reached the final sentence. She will insist that the glass was not hers. The words seemed to strike the room without sound.
That was what Tabitha had said while the drug slowed her tongue. Not my glass. Sir Bertram had written her protest before Constance gave her reason to make it. Tabitha placed one hand on the table.
For the first time since the garden, the injury felt larger than disbelief. They had not merely expected her collapse.
They had prepared the language that would erase anything she tried to say inside it. Everard moved half a step toward her, then stopped before extending his hand. Tabitha saw the restraint.
She could not accept comfort yet, but neither did she want him to leave. "Stay," she said. He remained where he was. Harwood's face had gone pale.
I did not understand what I had been given. You did not ask, Tabitha replied. He accepted the sentence without protest.
Latham copied the relevant entries and marked each page in the presence of Harwood, the clerk, Lady Margaret, Everard, and Tabitha.
The original certificate, memorandum, and daybook were returned to Harwood's dispatch case.
Harwood sealed the lock, and Latham added a second paper seal across the clasp, so any opening before Sunday would be visible. On June 27th, Latham went to Mr. Hale's carriage yard with Mrs. Penrose and a churchwarden from St. Anselm's. Everard sent 2 servants, only to remain at the gate as witnesses against intimidation. They did not enter the tack room. Mr.
Hale led Latham to the cupboard himself. Inside lay the remaining leather restraint, its crimson repair dark with age, and its cut edge undisturbed. No one compared it with the sealed fragment.
Latham wrapped it in plain cloth, tied it, and sealed the knot, while Mrs. Penrose and the churchwarden signed the transfer record.
Hale then produced the original hire docket dated June 14th, naming Rook's servant and the destination beyond Highgate.
He signed a separate receipt allowing the dark blue carriage to be moved temporarily to St. Anselm's forecourt. Before it left the yard, its condition was recorded.
The fixed padded side panels remained intact. The thickened leather inside the door remained original. No wrist restraint was attached. No fitting had been reconstructed.
Rook's liveried servant appeared at the end of the lane while the horses were being put to. Mr. Rook expects old fittings to be destroyed, he called.
Hale looked toward the sealed parcel in Latham's hands. Then Mr. Rook should have asked sooner. No one threatened the servant. No one detained him.
The carriage rolled away beneath a canvas cover, accompanied by the churchwarden and Latham. By dusk, it stood in St. Anselm's forecourt.
The sealed restraint rested in a separate compartment of Latham's case. The original crimson fragment remained sealed elsewhere in the same case, untouched since the inn.
At Wexborough House, Tabitha read Sir Bertram's memorandum one final time from Latham's copy. The sentence waited at the bottom of the page, written before she had ever lifted Constance's glass.
She will insist that the glass was not hers. By the time Reverend Fawley ended the charity sermon on Sunday, June 28th, every pew in St.
Anselm's chapel was occupied by someone prepared to feel virtuous. Parish patrons filled the front rows. Several magistrates sat near the aisle.
Ladies who had attended the Wexborough garden breakfast whispered behind folded fans.
Montague Rook stood beside the subscription table, with Sir Bertram at his right, and Constance seated just behind them in pale blue.
Outside, beneath canvas in the forecourt, waited the dark blue carriage from the Quenby Mews. Tabitha remained seated until the final prayer ended.
her wedding ring pressed lightly against her glove.
Everard sat beside her but did not touch her, did not bend near, and did not ask whether she was ready. He had promised not to speak first.
Reverend Folly invited those wishing to subscribe to remain. Rook stepped forward.
Before the pledges are gathered, I wish to thank every family who understands the duty owed to distressed female relations. Tabitha rose. The movement drew every eye in the chapel.
Before anyone gives money, she said, I ask that they hear what that duty looked like when it was prepared for me. Rookie's expression did not alter.
Your Grace, this is neither the place nor the occasion. It is the same chapel where my uncle used a physician's paper to stop my marriage.
It is now being used to raise subscriptions for the house named in that paper. There could be no more proper place. Sir Bertram stood.
My niece is turning a family sorrow into spectacle. The spectacle occurred in my garden, Tabitha replied. Today I will give chronology. Reverend Folly stepped from the chancel.
The chapel will remain open. No one is compelled to stay. No one moved. Mr. Latham approached the table carrying his locked case.
The first question is whether removal was prepared before illness was alleged, Tabitha said. Latham produced the original carriage hire docket transferred by Mr. Hale under signed receipt.
This records that a dark blue closed carriage was hired on June 14th by a servant acting for Mr. Montague Rook.
The stated destination was a private house beyond Highgate. Ruka lifted one hand. Families arrange transport before it becomes necessary.
That proves foresight, not cruelty. Then let the congregation see what kind of transport was considered necessary. At Reverend Folly's signal, the chapel doors were opened.
The canvas had already been drawn aside. From the nearest pews, the fixed padded panels could be seen through the open carriage door, along with the thickened leather inside. Mr.
Hale stood in the forecourt beside the churchwarden who had witnessed the transfer. Is that the same carriage? Latham asked. It is, Hale replied. The padded panels are original.
The detachable restraints were removed after the carriage came back to my yard.
None have been replaced. Latham unlocked one compartment of his case and displayed the packet sealed at the Crown and Mitra Inn. The witness marks made by Tabitha, Mrs.
Penrose and Latham remained unbroken. He opened it before the congregation and removed the crimson fragment with 3 black cross stitches.
From a separate compartment, he took the parcel transferred by Hale in Mrs. Penrose's presence. Its seals were intact. When opened, the remaining leather restraint lay across the table.
Latham aligned the fragment with the cut edge. The threads met. The 3 black stitches continued without interruption. A low murmur moved through the chapel. Mrs. Penrose rose from the side pew.
I was confined in the same private house after my husband died. I repaired a restraint there with crimson webbing and 3 black cross stitches. I cannot prove every act in this matter.
I can prove what those fittings were used for. Rook looked toward her with open contempt.
You were a patient who resented necessary care. I was a widow who would not sign away her property. Tabitha waited until the whispering ceased.
The second question is whether my collapse was natural or manufactured. The garden maid came forward. Her face was pale, but her voice held. I placed a plain glass of orgeat beside her grace.
Miss Quenby sent me away for a napkin. When I returned, the plain glass was gone. A silver-rimmed glass with a star-shaped chip was there instead. Latham opened another sealed box.
The chipped rim caught the chapel light. The apothecary stood. I examined the residue in the presence of witnesses. It was consistent with a strong laudanum preparation mixed into something sweet.
I cannot state the exact quantity. I cannot say who added it. And your ledger? Tabitha asked. He opened the book he had brought. 3 days before the breakfast, a servant in Mr.
Rook's livery purchased a concentrated sleeping draught charged to Mr. Rook's account. Rook gave a short laugh. Laudanum is sold every day in London. Yes, Tabitha said.
That entry alone proves only access. Mary rose next. I saw a blue-stoppered vial in Constance's dressing case before the wedding and again in her basket at the breakfast.
I did not see her open it. I did not see her pour from it. Constance leaned forward. Then you prove nothing. She proves what she saw, Tabitha answered. No more.
No less. The third silence felt heavier than the first 2. Dr. Harwood approached, carrying his sealed dispatch case. Latham showed the paper seal laid across the lock on June 26th.
It remained unbroken. Harwood opened the case and removed the original preliminary certificate dated June 14th. I signed this upon Sir Bertram's account, he said.
I had not examined Miss Ainsley. It recommends private rest if nervous agitation worsens. It does not establish incapacity. And the second document? Tabitha asked.
Harwood handed the sealed memorandum to his surgery clerk. The young man identified the entry in the daybook.
A messenger from Quenby House delivered this packet at 20 minutes past 10 on June 20th. Dr. Harwood was absent. I recorded the sender and the instruction that the packet be retained until...
He was summoned. When was the message from Wexborough House received? At 12 minutes past noon. After I had collapsed, Tabitha said.
Harwood opened the memorandum and read the passages aloud.
It described Tabitha failing to recognize relatives, speaking incoherently of a poisoned glass, recoiling from family assistance, and requiring immediate removal to Ruki's private house.
Then he reached the final sentence. She will insist that the glass was not hers. The chapel became utterly still.
Tabitha looked first at Sir Bertram, then at Rook, and finally at the patrons who had been asked to fund the house prepared to receive her. If this was care, why was the carriage ordered before I refused it? The physician's recommendation signed before I was examined, and the account of my collapse written before I collapsed. Ruki recovered first. Sir Bertram supplied the family account.
I arranged only transport. Sir Bertram turned sharply. You arranged the draft in the house. I arranged what you requested. Sir Bertram's composure cracked. He looked toward Constance.
No one instructed my daughter to drug anyone. If she changed a glass, she acted foolishly and alone. Constance rose so quickly, her chair struck the pew behind her.
Alone? Her voice broke through the room. You told me everyone already believed her. You said changing one glass would make Harwood's paper credible. Sir Bertram's face emptied. Be silent, Mr.
Rook supplied the draft. You dictated the memorandum. You told me what questions to ask when she became slow. Rook stepped away from her.
You hysterical fool. Constance stared at him, then at her father, and understood too late that both men had intended to leave her carrying the visible guilt.
Her confession had not created the case. It only completed the pattern already laid before the congregation. One by one, patrons began removing their names from the subscription sheet.
A woman who had whispered episode in the Wexborough garden lowered her eyes and crossed away from Constance's pew.
Reverend Foley asked the licensing justices present to retain copies of the evidence list.
One magistrate informed Sir Bertram that he should not sit in his official capacity, pending examination of his conduct, Doctor.
Harwood publicly withdrew any claim that his preliminary certificate proved Tabitha incapable of judgment. Everard rose only then. He did not move in front of Tabitha. He stood beside her.
After my wife was drugged, he said, I asked whether she might have imagined the conspiracy around the carriage. I asked that before I asked whether she had been poisoned.
I used a physician's category to make my own uncertainty comfortable. The failure was mine.
I do not ask this room to admire the admission, and I do not ask my wife to pardon it. He looked toward Rook. Wexborough patronage is withdrawn from your house, mister.
Latham will place the testimony, documents, glass, restraint, and carriage record before the licensing justices.
They will determine the inquiry that follows. No constable dragged anyone from the chapel. No sentence was pronounced in a single afternoon. The consequences began in quieter forms.
Subscription cards were returned. Invitations died before they could be sent. Men who had praised Sir Bertram's judgment avoided his eye.
Rook discovered that respectability could vanish faster than evidence. When the gathering dispersed, Tabitha asked that Mrs. Penrose and the maid leave through the front doors.
She walked between them into the forecourt. The dark blue carriage stood uncovered in full daylight. Those who had once called its purpose care now saw the padded walls and said nothing.
Later, after every object had been returned to its separate custody and the chapel had emptied, Tabitha remained near the altar where she had chosen marriage 13 days earlier.
Everard stood several feet away. What must I do now? He asked. Tabitha looked toward the open side door, then back at him. Nothing for me, she said. Something with me, by the first week of
September. London had learned to lower its voice whenever Montague Ruca's name was mentioned, as though discretion acquired after exposure could restore virtue to everyone who had subscribed before.
Asking questions. The private house beyond Highgate remained under examination by the licensing justices.
Several women had been removed to trustworthy relatives, while others were placed in independent lodgings under arrangements supervised by solicitors and respectable female patrons. No single inquiry
could repair every life hidden behind its doors, but names had been entered into proper records, restraints had been accounted for, and families accustomed to calling obedience care had been required.
To answer in writing, Rookie's subscriptions vanished first. Credit followed. Men who had once praised his efficiency discovered that they had never known him well.
Sir Bertram resigned his duties as a magistrate before a formal demand could be issued, and left London for an estate belonging to distant Quenby relations.
He sent one letter to Mary, insisting that affection had guided every decision. Mary read it once, folded it without replying, and gave it to Mr. Latham.
Constance had gone to Bath, where relatives received her because blood required something less than welcome. Doctor.
Based Fritettis Grace for Zorb, Grachini, Ikati, and but he would to operate with the inquiry and surrendered. Everard Levant paper, the Crimson Fragment, the
Maining restraint, the star-chipped glass, the Carriage docket, the restraint certificate, the family memorandum, and the surgery daybook remained in separate custody under Latham's records and
the direction of the licensing justices. The blue stoppered vial had never been recovered.
Tabitha knew where each proven object rested, and for the first time she did not need to see them to trust that they existed. Wexborough House changed more quietly.
The servants no longer watched Tabitha for signs of fragility. They brought household questions to her because she answered them carefully.
She resumed public duties by degrees, receiving tenants' representatives, reviewing charitable accounts, and attending parish meetings where no one dared ask whether conversation overstimulated her.
A committee invited her to become the public face of a campaign against private houses. She declined.
I won't make suffering useful merely because society now finds it respectable, she told Everard after reading the invitation.
He stood on the opposite side of her writing table, where the connecting door remained bolted beyond the bedchamber wall. What will you support? Independent lodging, legal advice, inspections that
include women who may speak to residents without relatives present. Then those are the causes that will receive the Wexborough name. Only after the accounts are examined. Your confidence in
Humanity remains inspiring. My confidence in Ledgers is stronger. His smile came easily now, but he did not treat humor as pardon.
During the 3 months since the chapel, he had never asked when she would forgive him. He consulted her before extending patronage. He accepted refusal without sulking.
He crossed the corridor and knocked at her outer door each time he wished to enter, though the connecting passage would have saved him half the length of the house.
Once, during a thunderstorm, Tabitha heard him pause on the other side of the closed panel. He did not knock. He did not assume fear gave him permission.
The next morning she found a note beneath her breakfast cup. It contained one line, "I was near if needed." She placed it in the center drawer beside her mother's rosemary seed packet.
Mary's future had also taken shape. Lady Margaret agreed that Mary would remain under her household supervision through the coming season, while Latham arranged independent trustees for the modest
Ainsley funds that Sir Bertram had once treated as leverage. Mary asked to study Italian, estate correspondence, and mathematics. Lady Margaret raised one silver brow.
Your sister appears determined to become inconveniently educated. It may run in the family, Tabitha replied. Mary no longer apologized before taking a second roll at breakfast.
She no longer asked whether she might speak when Sir Bertram's name arose. These changes pleased Tabitha more than every returned subscription card.
Her marriage proceeded through ordinary days rather than declarations.
She and Everard discussed household repairs, parish accounts, Mary's tutors, and whether the east drawing room should remain blue. Everard preferred green.
Tabitha informed him that this revealed a dangerous weakness of judgment. I'm relieved you've identified it before the next public inquiry, he said.
I intend to observe you closely. That sounds ominous, only for the curtains. Laughter returned before tenderness did. It entered through small openings and asked for nothing.
On a mild afternoon in September, Tabitha opened the center drawer of her writing desk and removed the cream paper packet. Its folds had softened with age.
Her mother's handwriting remained faded but clear. For remembrance and for beginning again. She carried it downstairs and through the doors leading into the walled garden.
Everard stood beside an empty bed where the last summer flowers had been cleared. His coat lay over a bench. A small trowel rested in his hand. He looked at the packet but did not reach for it.
You came prepared, Tabitha said.
I was told Duchess's dislike waiting for gardeners. This Duchess dislikes discovering that the Duke has decided where her seeds belong. Everard placed the trowel on the soil at once.
Then I withdraw every claim to horticultural authority. Not every claim. I may require assistance. Hope touched his expression carefully.
Where would you like them? The question carried more than gardening, but he left the meaning with her.
Tabitha walked to the sheltered edge of the bed, where the brick wall held the afternoon warmth. Here.
Rosemary needs light and soil that does not keep too much water. A plant of sound principles. She knelt. He knelt beside her, leaving enough room that their sleeves did not touch.
Together they loosened the soil. He waited until she opened the packet. The seeds were smaller than memory had made them.
For a moment she saw her mother's hands measuring medicine, folding linen, and saving this packet for a future she had not lived to witness. Grief came quietly now.
It did not take the garden from Tabitha or make her less certain of where she was. Everard saw it and did not ask her to recover. She wrote for remembrance, Tabitha said.
And for beginning again. Both can occupy the same ground. Tabitha looked at him. She had married because dawn was approaching, and she needed a household Sir Bertram could not command.
She had stayed because leaving would have allowed everyone to call departure another symptom. Neither reason explained why she remained now.
I married you because I needed an independent household before morning, she said.
I know. I remained because I refused to let them define leaving as proof. His face tightened, but he stayed silent. That is not why I remain now. He did not move.
Expect I'll continue to make errors. Almost certainly. Your confidence is touching. My confidence is evidence-based. He laughed softly, and this time she joined him.
No one witnessed the sound. No one applauded. Tabitha scattered the seeds. Everard used the trowel only after she handed it to him.
They covered the narrow row together, his hand moving beside hers and never over it. When the work was finished, the empty packet lay open between them on the dark soil.
That evening, after Mary and Lady Margaret had gone upstairs and the household had quieted, Tabitha stood inside her bedchamber before the connecting door.
The bolt had remained closed since the morning after the garden breakfast. On the other side there was no sound. Everard had not waited there in expectation. She drew the bolt back and opened the panel. The short passage beyond was empty, lit by one lamp. Tabitha crossed it and knocked on his door.
Everard opened it wearing a dark dressing gown, surprise breaking through his usual control. He did not step forward. Tabitha, she held out her hand.
You may come through. His gaze searched her face before settling on her offered fingers. Are you certain? Yes. Only then did he take her hand and cross the threshold. Behind them, the passage remained open until Tabitha turned and closed the door herself.
In the garden below, rosemary seeds rested beneath the soil, carrying remembrance into darkness and waiting for light.